All right, today we're going to be factor by grouping. That is the name of it. This is when you have 4 or more terms. Okay, when we're deciding what to factor and which method we use to factor, we need to remember how many terms there are. So with factor by grouping, it's always 4 or more. And the reason is because we have to divide it into all the terms into equal size groups. So when you have 4, it's pretty easy. You just divide it right in half, and you have 2 groups. The first thing you got to do is take the GCF. So the first step, if factor by grouping is always 2 steps. So the first step, the first line that you're going to write is taking the GCF out of both the first group and the second group. So when I take the GCF, if I look at this first group, pretending like there isn't another group there, this one, I see that x is in both terms. The lowest exponent is 1, so I'm going to factor out an x. Divide each of these by x, and I'm left with a plus 2. The x's cancel in both of these cases. So you just do that a second time with this group. Now remember, this sign right here is always the sign that you put here. Okay? Doesn't matter what your GCF is, that sign always goes there, and that is the sign of the GCF. So here we have 3 that divides into both of these. So positive 3 is our GCF, and we're left with a plus 2. You'll notice that this one and this one have to be the same, must match. Okay, that's the first step. You can't stop here or you didn't factor by group. You have to take the second step and write the 2 sets of parentheses. So factor by grouping always ends in 2 parentheses. Most everything we do does 2 sets of parentheses, always. So the first set is always the matching binomial, and the second one is what's outside. Okay, technically we're factoring a plus 2 as a GCF, but you know, sorry, this should have been a plus 2, my bad. All right, beautiful. All right, so let's try it with this one. Same idea, there's 4 terms, we divide it in half. We take the GCF out of the first one, this first group. We have x's in both terms, and the lowest exponent is 2. So I'm dividing x by x squared. So remember, it's just GCF, and I'm left with x minus 3. I take this sign here and put it there. Has to be that sign, always. Now, these guys don't have a GCF, so this is the one instance where we do factor out a 1. And in this case, it's a negative 1. So it's important you realize that at this moment, we don't normally factor out a 1 when we factor out GCF. When you're factor by grouping, that's when you should. Okay, so here we're actually factoring and dividing by negative 1. So that changes that negative x to a positive x, and that positive 3 to a negative 3. Now the second step is exactly the same. The second step is exactly the same as the last one. So that was the first step where you group and you take the GCF out of each group. And the second step is your 2 sets of parentheses. X minus 3 going in one, and x squared minus 1 going in the other. Okay, now you do have to check to see if you can factor more when you have an exponent like this. Whenever you have an exponent, there's a possibility that you could factor more. Now, x minus 3 can't. There's no GCF, and so that's nothing we can do there. But x squared minus 1 is dots, so we do x plus 1, x minus 1, and now we're factored completely. So we always need to check to see if we're factored completely in this class. All right, so here's another example. You divide it in 4 terms. You divide it in half, and you look for a GCF. I can't find a GCF. What do I do? Oh no, who could have thought? Who would have thought? So what we need to do is when grouping doesn't work, we need to rearrange. Now, generally, you can rearrange however you want, but I always say group first. If the grouping doesn't work, then rearrange. Don't don't rearrange to begin with. It causes chaos. It's chaos, I tell you. So I usually just take the second term and fly it to the end. So, and that usually groups it so that it works, because it's grouping everything in different. So if 4x squared goes first, then the 6x minus y, then the 14xy squared, and then I put this guy at the end. And then I try to group. Now, if this doesn't work, then you can't factor by group. You just can't. So, oh, look, I got a 2x as a GCF here. That's fabulous. So we're left with 2x plus 3y. Remember, this is a minus sign, so is this. 7 divides into both of these, and so there's no x in the second one, but there is a y squared in both. So 7y squared. And what am I left with? 2x plus 3y, because this guy here is negative. So these should always match. So if I did forget to divide by that negative, they wouldn't match. So then I would have to go back and check. So the last step here is this matching parentheses, and then 2x minus 7y squared. Beautiful, gorgeous. We do have to see if we can do some dots or soap on this. So squared, but we have squared is a perfect square, but this 7 is not. No GCF in any of them, so we're done. Done. Okay, this last one here shows you when you have more than 4 terms. When you have more than 4 terms, there's 2 ways you can divide it. You can divide it in half, like that, or you can divide it in groups of 2. Basically, try one. If one doesn't work, try the other. I'm going to try this one because that's where I am right now. So I'm going to factor out the GCF of this. So it would be x squared, and I'd be like with x squared minus 1. This one has, remember, this is the minus, that goes there. Negative 3x. There's a 3 in both terms and an x, lowest exponent. So when I divide, I get positive x squared and then minus 1. Remember, these should always match, so you should always be kind of focusing on that. This is negative, so this goes here. And we have a 10 in both, but that's it. So I'm dividing both by negative 10. And we're left with x squared minus 1. Oh, now the second step, always 2 sets of parentheses, always. This one just so happens to be the first one, always the x squared minus 1, always what's in the parentheses. The second one is always the GCFs, and those GCFs just happen to have 3 terms. You happen to have 3 of them. So this guy we can factor more, and this one we are going to learn how to factor tomorrow or the next day. All right, so to be continued. Ooh, so exciting. All right, have a great day.